Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star sports podcast. It's August 1st, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We continue our coverage of Chiefs training camp, now at about the halfway point, and an injury has cost the team a player who is moving up the depth chart. Nazeeh Johnson, a second-year defensive back who played only special teams last season, was getting first-team snaps with the defense in practice. He's also the team's gunner on kick coverage. But as he was defending a wide receiver during a drill at the indoor facility over the weekend, Johnson tore an ACL and will miss the season. Other injuries in camp have been less serious, although wide receiver Kadarius Toney is likely to miss the rest of practices with a knee injury, and tight end Jody Fortson will be out with a shoulder injury, so the Chiefs have not exactly escaped the injury bug. Beat writer Jesse Newell and I break down the injury situation and how the Chiefs are filling the gaps. After a break, you're going to hear from Kansas State football coach Chris Klieman. Beat writer Kellis Robinett and I spoke with Kleiman during Big 12 Media Days in July, and you'll hear how the coach of the defending league champion feels about prospects heading into this season. Okay, let's get started. Jesse.
Blair.
How you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. We're here at Missouri Western because it seems like that's where we always are at, Missouri Western, site of Chiefs training camp. And we just watched the third day of padded practice. So they've been hitting for these last few days, and hitting has taken a toll on the Chiefs in terms of injuries. Today was the first day there wasn't an injured Chief taken from the field. So two big ones so far. Turns out one more serious than the other. Let's get the I guess all injuries are serious enough in their own way, but Jody Fortson injured a shoulder. Doesn't sound like he's going to miss a ton of time. I don't know exactly when he'll be back, but Andy Reid didn't sound terribly concerned about that one. The concerning one, though, is cornerback Nazeeh Johnson tore his ACL probably about 50 feet from where we were standing at the indoor facility on Saturday because they moved inside with the storm, and you saw it right away. In fact, you were the first one to react to it. It was it looked bad, and it turns out it is bad with a torn ACL. What is his loss going to mean for the Chiefs?
Yeah, so if you'd asked me a month ago, 2 months ago, I probably would have said not that big of a deal. I know Dave Toub loves him as a gunner, and that's an important part of the game, but we know special teams has been devalued a little bit, and especially in the return coverage part of this. So it's great to have that guy, and obviously it's really important for Dave Toub to have a player on the outside he can trust. He thinks is one of the best in the NFL, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not huge. What we've seen from Nazeeh Johnson, though, is he's been in there for some first-team reps, like when Ladarius Sneed has been out. And so coming into the year, I think we all assumed Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, those two guys that got a majority of the reps. The Fab Five, as they called them a year ago, if you add in Brian Cook, Trent McDuffie to that mix as well. You figured those two guys who got a majority of the playing time last year would probably be competing for that third cornerback job, but instead it was Nazeeh Johnson who had kind of emerged at training camp. And so these are the type of stories that you come up with every year where a guy just, the light comes on and he becomes a better player. You heard Andy Reid talk today about, he said he had a good camp. He developed in year one to year two, and so I think it's a bigger deal than I would have thought a month ago. Now, I think for the Chiefs, they just keep loading up at cornerback and in the secondary. They just keep adding bodies you think maybe aren't even necessary, but that's where it helps in a moment like this, where you've got a Nick Jones, who was a seventh-round pick from this past year. You've got a guy like DiCaprio Bootle, who's been around the system here a couple of years now. So they have some depth there to go along with the guys we already mentioned. But it's a blow for the Chiefs just because I think you noticed out there today when they went on 7-on-7s or 11-on-11s, Nazeeh was not out there, and there were times where receivers were more open than they were previously. So guys like Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson got to step up, and potentially a really good story for the Chiefs. It ends before the season starts because I think Nazeeh Johnson was going to play quite a bit in the secondary.
Yeah, gunner for Dave Toub, special teams, and got snaps in the Super Bowl last year. He was one of the 9 rookies, 9 players from the draft class who got Super Bowl snaps a year ago. And you're absolutely right. Who'd have thought, even coming out of OTAs, that this would be an injury that would resonate, but it did. And I think when you and I are done, when we're finished talking, we're going to play a little Joshua Williams and what he had to say about his friend going down, and actually how Nazeeh Johnson kind of inspires him or gave him some words of inspiration in conversations they had since the injury. So another little piece of news that happened since the last time we talked was a retirement. John Ross, a wide receiver and a former first-round pick, announced his retirement this week, or he was placed on the retirement list. I guess he hasn't announced it, but he was placed on the retirement list. And to me, the interesting footnote to him was where he was drafted.
Yes.
Why don't you remind us his position in the draft?
One pick ahead of Patrick Mahomes, which I'm sure, not that the Bengals right now or their fans would turn down Joe Burrow because of all the great things he's done for the Bengals. But so again, if we go back a month ago, I would have probably thought that was a really big deal for the Chiefs, because potentially you look at that and you say, okay, this guy's in the mix. He has the speed that we know about, and potentially that could be a really big deal. However, this was sort of the Josh Gordon training camp for him, which was we really didn't see much of him here other than with the threes, and really didn't emerge, didn't really show that much. And so his quick retirement was sort of a shock, but based off what we saw in those first early days, it didn't really look like it was going to turn out well for John Ross at the end of this thing. So why put yourself through training camp? Why put yourself through St. Joe humidity? Decide to retire, and so the Chiefs can move on and bring a different guy into camp. But this is kind of the contradiction we've talked about with the Chiefs, where the Chiefs don't have a lot of true number one receivers, again, not counting Travis Kelce, but they have some depth here. They have a lot of guys you like for the 5, 6, 7, 8 spots. And so whether it's the end Justin Watson or a guy like Richie James, who's been good, Justin Ross has had a really good camp, Rashee Rice has had moments. They have a pretty good back end of that, where it's fascinating to watch to see who emerges on every particular day. So I think John Ross, again, a month ago would have been a surprise that this happened, but I think he saw the writing on the wall and figured, why keep running in the heat when I don't have to? And so he moves on, the Chiefs move on, and I don't think it's going to be a big deal from here on out.
I'm glad you mentioned the wide receiver depth, because that is becoming increasingly apparent to me, being up here. Is just, look, I thought the position was a strength for the Chiefs a year ago with Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman, but I think this year there may not be a clear-cut number one wide receiver, but I think their 4, 5, 6, 7 this year is stronger than that group a year ago. And the reason I say that is I would put Rashee Rice in the bottom half of the, not in the top 3. Probably Justin Watson a year better than first year Justin Watson for the for the Chiefs a year ago. Justin Ross has looked good, very good at times here. I don't know how important it is to be really solid at 4, 5, and 6, but they are. It seems to me that they are, assuming that Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney, when he comes back, are your top 2 guys. The Chiefs just seem there's not going to be a Marcus Kemp getting on the field, as he did to catch a pass in the AFC Championship game a year ago. Yeah, so, a couple caveats, obviously, with this, which is, for the Chiefs, there have been times in 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, where Patrick has gone read to read to read to read and hasn't found guys open. So these guys have flashed at individual times. Again, we see a lot of the passing game out there, and 7-on-7s, or the advantage goes to the receiver. So we all know that. We all have to kind of go in there with that thinking. But I think you're bringing up a good point, Blair, and it also kind of relates to a column that our colleague Sam McDowell wrote, a really good piece about what Mahomes wants to accomplish in the offseason, or accomplish this season, where he was asked about that. And one of the big things he said for improvement-wise was just to keep getting to his next read. And so I think if you're the Chiefs, the reality of the situation is when you have a player like Patrick Mahomes, you just kind of have to keep relying more on him, because he can make things right even without Tyreek Hill, even without certain pieces of the offense, even without a true number one wide receiver. He's just got to get to his next read. He's just got to process things faster. And so it's sort of like we saw the offense last year without Tyreek Hill was pretty close approximation to the one with Tyreek Hill. And it's sort of like that's because the quarterback can always take more on because of the supernatural talent that he is. So I think when you're talking about the depth of those receivers, that's where this is going to play in, is that if Patrick Mahomes' focus is to always be sure that if read 1 is not open, read 2 is not open, read 3 is not open, he can get to the 4th read,
That's where the Justin Rosses of the world, that's where the Richie James of the world become very important and make this Chiefs offense really hard to stop, even without that dynamic number one playmaker that so many NFL teams have at the number one spot. So I think that's sort of how the Chiefs are going to operate, and it's how it's going to be planned for them to operate. It's just sometimes you got to lean a little bit more on number 15. And if you can do that and still approximate much of the offense that you did when you had a dynamic playmaker like Tyreek Hill, then that's great, and it's cheaper, and it's one way the Chiefs can go and still be successful offensively.
So do you think it's a potential problem not to have a clear-cut number one? As long as Andy Reid has been the head coach, you've gone from Dwayne Bowe to Jeremy Maclin to Tyreek Hill to Juju Smith-Schuster. And now and we've talked about it several times, there just isn't a wide receiver on this team that has more than 57 receptions in a season, and that was Richie James for the Giants last year. Justin Watson's been around, MVS has been around, Richie James has been around. They've never been the lead guy on their team. Some wide receiver is going to end up with 75 to 85 receptions this year. I can't tell you who it's going to be. I suggested in a story that it could be MVS just because I don't know. He just seems like a likely candidate.
It's hard to get the AFC Championship game out of my mind. I mean, when they needed him to play, and that was about the only receiver left.
Yeah, 6 for 116 in that
game.
He
went wild. So That was a really good one. Can they do it without? Absolutely. That's what they did last year. I mean, you said Juju's the number one. He had
about 85 receptions or something like that?
I mean, he was, but
had a big Super Bowl.
Did anybody just go to the Chiefs and they said, "Oh my gosh, got to look out for that Juju Smith-Schuster"? I mean, he sort of played that role we're talking about in the offense, which was he found holes in the zone. He made contested catches when he had to, and he was available for Patrick Mahomes, which is maybe that's what we're talking about here is the reliability. You could rely on Juju. You knew where he was going to be. He developed that chemistry with Mahomes. These dudes are so young. I mean, we talked about this before, but they have one receiver on the roster that's been here more than 2 years, and that's Cornell Powell, who is not making his team unless crazy things happen.
Right.
The other thing I want to mention, and this is just I always look at this number and I just can't believe it. There's some really good stats out there from Sports Info Solutions that sometimes we cite, and how you score points, how you're productive in the NFL is you pass the ball beyond the first down marker. You're going to throw the ball downfield, and that's where the big plays happen. That's why, when the Chiefs were capped a little bit by that too high safety look, they had to rework things. Last year, when the Chiefs threw it behind the sticks, okay, there's a stat called expected points added. So how many points did you add on those plays? If you add them up, if you got a 12-yard gain, that's worth 1 point or whatever the case may be. The Chiefs added 61 points of EPA on throws behind the first down marker, okay? That's pretty good to be able to throw it short of the first down and still gain a lot of yardage. Second place in the NFL were the Bills at negative 17 expected points added on those throws. So what I'm saying here again is the Chiefs working with kind of a cheat code that the rest of the NFL doesn't have, which is what they're doing offensively is different and effective and not like anybody else. So, we can go down here. Can the Bills play without a number one? I don't know at this point. I mean, Josh Allen's really good, but he's always had Stephon Diggs, and, I mean, that's really worked out well for them. But the Chiefs are just operating a different way, and it's hard for us to sort of recall this in our minds. But last year, I mean, remember the Bengals game the previous year when the Chiefs lost to the Bengals where Mahomes wasn't picking a read and throwing it to him. And in the offseason, he talked about wanting to find, go more to check down, stay in the pocket more, not, have a lot of stress on his tackles. And in 1 year, he flipped that, and boom, now he's a guy that is finding these guys behind the line of scrimmage or behind the first down marker, and they are running for lots and lots of yardage, and that's because of the scheme, the spacing, Andy Reid, partly Travis Kelce, but they really have things rolling. So I just see the Chiefs as something different right now. They have figured out something else on the NFL that maybe the other 31 teams are still chasing to find, and that's part of the reason you win a Super Bowl, and that's part of the reason that Patrick Mahomes and these other guys he throws it to, even if they aren't household names yet, still can be pretty effective.
Okay, let me get your thoughts on one other offensive player. He seems to do something impressive every day, whether it was in pads or now that he's in pads, and that's Deneric Prince, running back. You've written about him. We've discussed him. And now we're seeing him for the first time, against pretty good defense, and he continues to me. He impresses me. I don't know how you feel about him, but I think there's going to be a role for him on this team. He's just a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger than the other running backs, and he's faster. So, I can't help but think of Isaiah Pacheco, running around in the yellow jersey. I think you mentioned this last week.
Desperately trying to get in there.
Yes.
He does not want to see any more of what Deneric
34.
Prince is doing. I mean, and listen, this is natural. Isaiah's great, and he's motivated, and he's a cheerleader out here, all these sorts of things. But, he's not blind. None of us are blind. Deneric Prince has been one of the stories of camp. And you mentioned all those things he can do. He catches the ball all the time. Like one-handed catches, high pointing in the end zone catches. He had another one of those today. We'll see. I mean, the thing we'll see about, and I asked Andy Reid about this. I asked him about Deneric Prince, and he said pass protection, So still rookie, still learning that sort of part of the game. We saw Isaiah Pacheco took some time last year. The other part we don't exactly know yet, even though Andy Reid was encouraged through one day of 9-on-7 drills, is the vision with some of these guys. Because, if the vision was there perfectly, they probably would have gone drafted, you think?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's a reason that these big dudes that can run really fast aren't being taken early, and the Chiefs saw last year Pacheco had some issues with vision early on. They kind of taught him, and he learned along the way and got better at that. So, yeah, this is fascinating because it really is Pacheco 2.0 only with better hands. And, when the guys run like that, they get injured, and we have not seen Deneric Prince enough when it comes to just running the football. We also saw him, I got to mention, he fumbled the ball in Saturday's practice. So that's worth noting too. Andy Reid kind of got after him on that because those are the types of mistakes that'll get you benched right away. And we can talk through them all through the preseason. But if you start fumbling the ball, put it on the ground, you're not going to be in there long, especially for Reid. So him and Sky Moore to me are the two stories of camp. Those are the ones, if you're placing bets, if I was placing bets, I'd put the camp breakouts, I would put him on those two pieces because to me those two guys have looked different and emerged in a different sort of way where it just seems very unlikely that they're not going to contribute for Sky Moore in a much bigger way than he did a year ago, and for Deneric Prince. His path is the exact same as Pacheco last year. You start as a kickoff returner, you start to get some carries, you get your experience with that, and then you see where it goes from there. For the Chiefs, they got to love having two of those guys that are going to have very similar skill sets, again, with Deneric Prince showing he can catch the ball too.
I agree with those two, and I would add Matt Bushman to the list.
I keep asking Matt Nagy about Bushman. I keep asking Andy Reid about Bushman. The blocking is a question mark, but he catches everything. This is kind of a cross-sport comparison here. He reminds me a little bit of Jared Casey. He's taller, obviously, but Jared Casey for Kansas, where it's like this dude just catches everything. And at some point, this tight end that catches everything, you find a way to play him because it's so jarring that no matter what you throw his way, it's always going to be brought in. But, yeah, he's absolutely got a chance to make this roster after he didn't a year ago because of injury.
Okay, I promise that in a near future, probably next week, podcast segment, we will talk defense. We don't seem to spend a lot of time talking defense. It's tough for defensive players to flash at training camp, even with the padded practice. It's not tackle to the ground, practice. So we don't talk much defense, but there's a lot to get to there as well. So we'll talk about the defense next time. All right, we're going to end this conversation with Joshua Williams speaking about his friend Nazeeh Johnson.
Yeah, man, Nazeeh, he's been such a just great guy in the locker room. Like, he's been doing this thing on the field, especially like this camp. So seeing something like that happen to somebody I'm so close with, I speak to him. He's easily one of the closest guys to me in the locker room. It hurt to see that, and I used it as motivation. I spoke to him when it happened later, and I spoke to him this morning, and he's just telling me, use him as inspiration, and that's what I try to do. Go out there and remember, like, okay, he was giving it his all. He didn't get the result he wanted. Nobody wants to go down, so he's saying, you go out there, give it your all, and I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah, what does this team need to do to pick up for that loss, I guess?
We have a lot of guys, a lot of great players. He was a great player on defense this camp, but even last year he was doing so many things on special teams that hurts. But we have a lot of talented guys. I would say Coach Reid and all the coaches really just do a great job in making sure the next person is ready and prepared. So hopefully I don't expect to see any hits from production. I think the next guy jump up there and do his thing and take his role, but it's definitely going to hurt.
Let's catch up with Kansas State coach Chris Klieman. As Big 12 Media Days were winding down in Arlington, Texas a couple of weeks ago, K-State beat writer Kellis Robinett and I were able to spend some time with Kleiman, and we covered a variety of topics. Here we go. We spent a lot of time talking about reacting to the championship game victory here, but I wanted to get your thoughts on reacting to the bowl loss, what you took out of that, and kind of lessons learned from.
Did you talk to Will Howard?
Yeah, we did.
He's furious.
Yeah.
Did you talk to Colin Klein?
All of them.
Please talk to Colin Klein. Those two guys are furious because we were on a big stage and had a chance to go ahead right before half and didn't, and give Alabama a ton of credit because they stopped us down there and we didn't make the play, and then it snowballed on us from there. I hope our guys realize that we were on that same stage and we were playing toe-to-toe with them until we didn't finish a drive. And so I think it's going to help us because as great a season as we had and winning the Big 12 championship, and if somebody asked me this question, would you rather run the Sugar Bowl or won the Big 12 championship? I'll take the Big 12 championship 10 times over. But our kids had a sour taste in their mouth when they left the Superdome as far as, you know what, we belong on this stage. We got to get back to this stage.
Cooper Beebe, heck of a player for you guys, but he unfortunately plays a position that doesn't get a whole lot of individual recognition. Like, he could never be Big 12 MVP.
No, but you're going to get him on the Ring of Honor, aren't you?
Well, we're going to try. We'll see if we can do it. But do you think if people recognize offensive linemen the way maybe they should, do you think he could be the most valuable player in this league?
Yeah, it'll never happen, and Beebs knows that. But for us, you could have our entire offensive line being the MVP because we're going to go as far as our offensive line takes us. And Will Howard would tell you the same thing. And honestly, Daniel Green would tell us the same thing because in this league, you have to run the football. Everybody wants to throw it and have all these gaudy stats and stuff, but you better be able to run the football. And it starts with those guys up front. If we're going to be really efficient in the passing game, it's going to be because those guys up front are moving the line of scrimmage and us being able to run the ball, and then it keeps our defense on the sideline.
Do you remember the first time you looked at Cooper doing something on the field and you thought, this is really going to be a guy for us?
It was probably halfway through the pandemic year because he wasn't in great shape in 2020 when he came in. Nobody was. And then he was always light on his feet. He started getting in shape. And then I saw a guy that just was a road grader. And then in 2021, I thought he really took his game to the next level. He was alongside Nazeeh Johnson, and Noah was a great communicator and a great leader on the offensive line. And for a guy to be able to be an interior guy and start at left tackle, it doesn't happen very often. And he was a dominant left tackle in the Big 12 with an interior body. That told you he had a great competitive spirit to him, and he understood his technique. Then we were able to move him inside once Katori started to really come around, and now he's right where he belongs.
Is it his footwork that makes him special? Or?
Footwork, as well as he just sees things really, really well. Part of it is film study. He knows what looks mean and where stunts and movements. I think the biggest compliment to an offensive lineman is not just being able to knock somebody off the ball, but be able to react to when the picture changes, because I'm not always going to be in front of you and all of a sudden I leave. How do I know that's coming from this way, or is it somebody looping back around? Coop just understands the game really well, and he's able to communicate that on the field, and that's the biggest thing about having all five of those offensive linemen back, not their ability, but their communication and the fact that those guys have played so many snaps together.
One thing that strikes me as very interesting about you and Will Howard is that you've always been a very staunch supporter of Will. Even when he struggled, you were his biggest supporter. Where did your confidence come from and stay with that to where he, now everybody's right there with you?
Yeah. For starters, he shouldn't have been thrust into what he was in 2020. Not because he was a true freshman, but because he missed all of fall camp. He came in as an early mid-year enrollee. I think either he had COVID or was in close contact, so he was out a long time, and then he had to come in and play. And I thought he was a great competitor, and I thought he had a really good fall camp. And then it just, he struggled down the stretch of that year. But he didn't say, well, this was the coach's fault, it was O-line's fault. He took ownership, and even in 2021 when Skyler got hurt and then he came back in and played and had some ups and downs, he took ownership for everything. And then when we told him, hey, we're bringing another guy for competition, and Will could have been our starter last year, but Rubes wasn't ready to be a backup. So we were going in with one quarterback then. We had to bring in another guy for competition, and he said, guys, bring him on. I'm good. And those two became best of friends. And I just saw him continue to evolve and continue to work on his game. And I can tell you, I can't remember, he had something, a family emergency, he had to go home. And so he missed the prep week for whatever game it was that Adrian was playing this past year. And he left on a Monday and came back on a Thursday. And he sat there and threw in the nets and worked on his drops and worked on all his skill set. And he wasn't playing, but just because he missed that week of practice, and he just said, I want to keep working on my craft, keep working on my craft. And he's a guy that goes and visits with people, quarterback guys and stuff, to continue to learn more about his mechanics. And I love the kid. I absolutely do, because of most guys would transfer.
Yeah.
And he didn't. Kids that have hard times, that say that everybody's against me and things aren't going well, go see Will Howard, because you can easily throw in the towel, or you can fight it and say, no, this is where I belong.
What do you think his game will take a jump now that he's playing with confidence?
100%. The belief that he has, the belief the teammates have in him, the fact that this is the second year with CK in the system, I think is huge. And I think he just scratched the surface. I really do. From what he is and what he will be, as far as I thought he had a really good second half of the season. Probably was the most improved player in the Big 12 second half of the season.
Agreed.
But I think he's very underrated. He might be the player of the year now. I think he might be.
What does he have to do? Where do you want to see physically the
accuracy?
Yeah. He's at 56 or 57, I think, for his
quick
career.
decision making and accuracy. And I saw some things in spring ball where I'm like, there it is, Will. You were decisive and you let it go, and the timing was right there. And when you did that last year and Julius Brents was covering, it was a completion. If you hesitated for a half a second, Julius Brents was breaking that pass up. That's the Big 12, and he knows it. That's Alabama. That's everybody else. Of just being decisive and saying, man, I'm going to rip it. And I know he wants to improve a little bit his athleticism, and he got a little bit leaner this year. I mean, people forget, in TCU, in the pandemic year, he runs 80 yards on the second play of the game. And in 2021, he outruns everybody from Texas for an 80-yard touchdown run in the first quarter. He's got athleticism, just leaning up a little bit. I don't want him to carry the ball 15 times a game, but I want him to be a threat 6 to 8.
Big picture question for you. NIL, has it been good or bad for Kansas State?
It's been really good for Kansas State.
Really
good. Because, I don't know a lot about it, which is really good. I mean, seriously, how much did Deuce Vaughn make last year? He would know more than I would. Kenny would. I don't have any idea. But Deuce probably earned it. I know this. He gave back to some of his teammates. I know that Adrian gave back to some of his teammates. I know Will Howard gives back to some of his teammates. But I don't know, and I think that's good that I don't know, because I don't want somebody to come up to me and say, hey, how come you got this kid this deal? How come I don't get this deal? Because we don't have anything to do with it. But I think it's really good for college football, because those guys built a brand at Kansas State, and why shouldn't they be able to profit off of that? I think it's great.
Have you ever had anybody come to you and say, look, I'll play, but only if you can arrange X amount of dollars, anything like that?
No, I haven't.
No, okay. So you've never had to be involved in a bidding war or anything like that?
No, I haven't had somebody come in, and I know the guys in our locker room and the culture we have in there. It wouldn't go down like that either. I mean,
okay.
I hope I've at least garnered their respect enough to say, hey, look, I'm not doing this unless this. I mean that then I would say probably not going to work out for a year. But I don't think that's the kind of players that we have. Hey, coach, I'm struggling with something. Can we find a way to give me some help? Then I'd make the appropriate calls or whatever I had to do to see if he could reach out to a collective or whatever it may be. But we've got such quality kids in our locker room, and the culture is at its highest right now, and that excites me, because it better be a really good culture as name members like this continues to evolve.
You've talked a little bit about him today, Gene Taylor. I know you love the guy, but what is it about him that makes him a good athletic director compared to other people you've worked with? other than hiring you, of course.
Well, I know it, and I haven't worked with that many. I haven't been head coach that long. But just the fact that he knows the right buttons to push, he can put his arm around me when he knows that not even a loss. Maybe, Skylar Thompson hurting his knee. He knew I was crushed. You know what? It's why you're good at what you do, Chris, because you care so much about that kid and about your players. When I go down there and say, hey, Gene, I need something for this. Okay, tell me why you need it. Explain why I need it. Okay, let's find a way to get it done. Or, Chris, we can't do this, and here's why. But he's very rarely says that, because I know if I'm going down there, it's something that it's going to help the student athlete. It's going to help the program. And, this business is hard enough as it is, as you guys cover it and see it. You better really enjoy the person you work with and you work for. And I'm a big believer in that, of who you work for is as important as where you work.
You've mentioned that the offensive line is a bunch of characters. I'm wondering does Ben Sinnott fit into that category as well?
He'd get devoured by those guys, but he thinks he fits into those guys. Ben's the jokester. Ben's come out of his shell quite a bit. And he's a fun guy to be around, and I like to give him crap. Don't go play golf with him, because he or Porter's probably the best golfer on the team. But Ben's starting to come around as far as having a little bit of a personality and stuff. But it doesn't get any better than coming out and listening to Gilly and those guys in practice. I mean, it's hilarious before practice.
Ben's from Iowa. He's from your hometown. Are you like Taylor gets a big smile every time he gets a Kansas kid? Are you that same way when you land Iowa players?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth and played high school football. I still know a ton of the coaches in there. My folks still live there. I know that it's very similar to the state of Kansas. Kids have a chip on their shoulder. And, not a lot of people gave Brendan Mott much of a thought. Brendan Mott's pretty close to an all Big 12 defensive end. Ben is an all Big 12 tight end. And we've got some other ones. We've got a couple more this year coming up. Asa Newsom, that just 15 minutes from my hometown, just enrolled in campus this summer. So I'm excited, because we're starting to cast that net around about a 500-mile radius that we need to be really successful at.
One more, at least for me, for you. Avery Johnson, everybody's really excited about him. Is he ahead of where you maybe thought he would be?
Yes.
At this point?
Yes. And the reason he's ahead of where I thought he would be is, you get to know somebody through the recruiting process, and you know he's a competitor because he plays all these other sports and stuff. But the drive internally that kid has, not just from the physical standpoint, but more importantly, the mental standpoint, is what has impressed me the most. The amount of film he watches, him coming in, and guys know I'm a defensive guy. Coach, let's just go through these coverages. Can you help me out? Coming and asking me, not me saying, Avery, we're meeting at this time. He'll come into my office and say, Coach, can we watch this cut up? And I want to go through these coverages. Or I want to go through these blitzes, because I want to know the whys that they're blitzing, or why they're disguising this way. That's where, it's hard. Not very many freshmen are like that are ahead of where a lot of the younger kids are, because they've never been exposed to that. He's learned it quickly through his high school study, and then obviously being a semester with Will of how much time and effort Will puts into the mental side of it.
Good? All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Chris.
Absolutely.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to producer Randy Mason for putting together the show, and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Todd Feedback, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell and Kellis Robinett for their contributions. Morning Sports Edition is the best digital sports section going. By accessing liveedition.kansascity.com, you get pages and pages of local coverage of the Chiefs, Royals, KU, K-State, Mizzou, Sporting Kansas City, The Current, and more, plus pages and pages of national coverage. Again, it's liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every week.